Hey guys, so today we're going to work on the Dodge Dakota pickup again. In a previous video you saw me replace this quarter panel. We did some rust repair and we put on a new skin. In today's video I want to do the body work. So I'll bring you along. What we'll do is we'll fill in what needs to be filled with body filler, prime it, sand it so it's good and smooth, and then we'll paint it and we'll put a clear coat on it. Hopefully we can do all that today. When I paint this, I do also want to paint the rocker panel, so we'll do that as well. So we'll apply a couple coats of filler with the Bondo, get this nice and level and contoured, and then I'll spray it with some high build. We'll wet sand it down to something nice like 600 grit, and then I'm going to do a two-part system. So I'm going to use a base color and then I'm going to use a 2K clear, both of which are going to be in rattle cans. I'm not going to put together my air compressor in that spray gun. But if any of this interests you, keep an eye. We'll get started. So before we start, I want to give you a quick rundown on what I'm going to use today. So I'm going to fill it with good old regular Bondo. This is the same stuff that they have been making since the 60s. It's probably a better formula, but it's good, cheap body filler. I'm then going to top that with some SEM branded high build primer. I chose this one because it's white. I've never sprayed a white primer, so white truck, white primer. We'll see how that works. I'm going to top that with a can of color. So this is the base coat. This is PW7, which is Chrysler's bright white. They've used it on every vehicle for years. I got the paint code from inside on the VIN tag. I'll show you where that is. And then I'm going to top that with some Spray Max 2K. I've used this stuff a lot. I've put it on fuel tanks, on motorcycle parts. I've put it on when I've done body work. You can't go wrong with it. It's durable, it does a good job, it's easy to use. The only problem with it is it does have isocyanates, which is cyanide derivative. So when you spray this, you gotta wear a mask, and you gotta wear a good one. You can't just stick on a dust filter or something you grab at the hardware store. It has to specifically be rated for this kind of paint. So don't let the fact that it comes in a rattle can fool you. You know, it's serious professional stuff, and you need to use serious professional safety equipment. And I'll show you what I use if you're curious. So that's what I'm using today, safety message aside. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mix up some of this Bondo, and I'm going to apply a coat and fill in these areas where this weld contracted and sunk in a little bit. To prep it for the Bondo, I've sanded it with 60 grit and I've wiped it down with it's ammonia-based glass cleaner, and that gets all the grease and fingerprints and crap off of it. And the 60 grit is gritty enough that the Bondo will have something to adhere to. I could go more coarse. I've never needed to. So I'm gonna mix this up, and we'll get it applied. I've let this sit. It's probably been an hour. I went in and got some lunch. It's set up, it's fully cured. I'm gonna now block sand it with 60 grit. I mean, this is just 60 grit sandpaper stapled to a 2x4. Works really well. Because I'll block sand this, and I'll start to figure out where the high spots and the low spots are on this panel, and then we'll address those as needed. So that's the first coat on and sanded. I want to show you some things here. We learned a lot about the surface, and I want to show you where the high spots and low spots are so that when we put the second coat of filler on, we can do it in a way that minimizes the amount of sanding we have to do. So looking at this surface here, you can see there's some unsanded filler here, followed by that, that spot where we sanded through. So this is a low spot right here. So we'll want to add more filler here. It's the same story here. So this lip of the door is up a little bit higher than the surrounding area. So we want to add a little bit of filler here. And then if we follow along, it's the same story here. So we're a little bit low right here. And if we keep taking a look, so here we're high, but it's not bad. It doesn't feel noticeably high. There's a spot here where we didn't sand into the filler. So that tells me that somewhere around here is a low spot. This right here is actually a high spot. Continuing around, we feel good for the rest of that. And then you can't see it, but down here there was one low spot where I just missed some filler. So I'm going to mark that for myself. And let's swing around back. If we look at the back here, this corner looks alright. It feels alright to my fingers too. Maybe a little bit right here. I think this is a high spot. So we'll fill in this spot here to kind of give us some height so we can layer that out. And then there's a big low spot right here that I need more filler on. Same with this. This is where that weld was, and that's low. And then there's just a couple of small defects in the filler. So everywhere I've marked here with a low is where I'm going to add filler for my second coat. If I do that instead of applying filler over the whole thing, then I don't have to sand it off later. And I don't know if you saw in the video, but sanding body filler really blows. The people who do this for a living every day, man, they deserve a lot of respect. It's dirty, it's hard work, it's sweaty work, and it's difficult. So, props to those guys. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to mix up a second batch of body filler. I'm going to apply it to the low spots and let it cure, and I'll bring you back when that's done, show you that, and then we can get that sanded out. Alright, so that's the second coat on. I'm having a little trouble with the Bondo setting too fast. It's hot. It's about 104 degrees in the shop right now. And I think that's causing the problem. So in the next batch, I'm going to go a little light on the hardener. But I've got this on now. Second coat's there. I filled all the marks. I marked low. So I'll let this set for half an hour while I go get something to drink. And then I'll come back and we'll sand it again the same way. So this has had some time to cure. It's curing up pretty fast because it's so warm in the shop. I'm going to sand this down now again with the 60 grit sanding block. Get it leveled out. Hopefully, this takes care of it and the surface is flat. I don't want to have to do too many more coats. I really hate body filler. And then we'll put the glaze on and we'll get that sanded. So I'm going to grab that sanding block and get this leveled out. So that's the second coat applied and sanded. As I work my way through this, there are still some low spots I want to address. So I was hoping to do this in 2 coats. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. So if I look at it, we still have a low spot right here. I can tell because of the amount of filler that is still left unsanded there. So that's a low spot. And then this low spot is still present. It kind of goes like this. And then this is a wicked high spot. And it's really obvious right through here. So I'm going to build this up. It's going to be a little thicker than I really wanted it to be. But that's going to have to, that needs to be done. This all feels really good. Actually, this right here is a little thick. I probably ought to sand that. So this is high. So I'll make sure that when I go through there, I get that sanded. And there's a little bit of a filler defect right here that I want to address. Big air bubbles in it. So I'll apply some there. And then come around back. The back feels all right. I think I could live with that. There is a little low spot right there. It looks like it was already low and I didn't get enough on there. So I'm going to mix up a third coat. And we'll apply it to these low spots. I'll let it sit and then we'll sand it again. And we'll see if third time is the charm. But I have to get this flat before I move forward, or when it's painted, you sight down it, it'll look wavy. And we put too much work into it to have it turn out like that. So I did not record the sanding of that last coat. I figure you guys can only watch so much fast forward body work sanding videos. So anyway, I didn't record that. But I've got this to the point now where I run my hand over it, it's smooth. I can't feel any high or low spots or transitions. So what I'm going to do now is mix up a really light coat of glaze. I'm going to glaze the thing, give it one final sand that'll make it good and smooth, and then we'll get it primed. So I've got the glaze on. I just put it on. It started to set on me again. It's just too damn hot. But it's not a problem. So I'm going to let this cure for half an hour or so. I'm going to come back and then I'll lightly sand, or I'll sand the entire panel to flatten it out. It's not even flattening out, it's just to smooth out the transitions. And then we'll be ready to put primer on this thing. So this is what it looks like after I've sanded the glaze. I think this looks really good. It's smooth. If I close my eyes, I can't feel the transition between the filler and the metal. I also don't feel any low spots. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to prime it. I'm not going to do it in the shop though. This doesn't get a lot of good airflow in it. It'll stink for a week. So I'm going to pull it out into my driveway, mask it off, and we'll give it a couple coats of primer. Alright, so that's the filler primer. It's done. I gave it 2 good coats. I'm going to let this dry overnight. It's getting kind of late and kind of windy. And then tomorrow I'll wet sand this and we'll start to see where the blemishes are in the filler and we can start to address those. I'll probably end up doing another coat of this after that wet sand to fill in any minor imperfections that are left. I've never used this white primer, but I tell you, it almost makes me feel like I'm done. The color match isn't bad for this Chrysler white. So I'm gonna back it back into the shop and we'll call it a day. So I think this is where I'm gonna wrap this video up. I had intended to include the paint and clear in this one, but this video is getting plenty long, so I'm gonna call it. If you enjoyed this content, would you consider subscribing to my channel? It's something that I would quite appreciate. Also, if you hit that notification bell, it will let you know when I actually do get the paint and clear video released. I look forward to that. I hope to have it out soon. So with that, guys, thanks. I appreciate you watching.